Hey guys, welcome to this tutorial where I'm going to walk you through the Ableton and Synths setup for bow and arrow. If you are a patron or if you've downloaded the tutorial files from my website, you have access to the Synths Percussion file, which is actually quite bare bones. Because we're using Ableton for the sound generation, all that's happening in Synths is we're sending MIDI notes and a few MIDI CCs using velocity, and that's pretty much all that's going on here. I have kick on channel 1, snare, tom 1, tom 2. I think there's just 3 velocity controllers we're using. One that's overall kit, one that's snare specific, and then one that is just tom 2 specific. We also have 2 different Ableton live sessions. One is for use with external synths, and one is for use without. I'm using a modular synth for 2 voices, and the workflow is not that different than using any other hardware synth. I made a separate tutorial where I'm walking through the patch from scratch for this song. You can also do this with traditional hardware synths. If you're not using sample and hold, which I explain in the other tutorial, I would recommend using this, which basically, instead of relying on sample and hold, I just am transposing this pitch effect to get the bass line. I'm using rings for a bass sound, and then I'm using the DFAM for this sort of esoteric riff. It's a one shot from my snare, which you can't hear because there's no instrument there. But you can use this file if you're looking to play the song with hardware synths, but if you don't want to use hardware synths, I made this file. The only difference is that instead of just having MIDI tracks that shoot MIDI out to something else, I went ahead and made a DFAM replica using analog and echo, and then Ring's voice for the bass. I have a snare of different instruments that I've layered strategically to navigate via velocity. For the bass, we're also triggering it from the kick, and I have this sequence that is automating the MIDI pitch effect, which you can see here over time creates the bass line. We're using velocity from the kick to modulate the envelope of the noise exciter. We're also using that same macro to modulate the amount of LFO sent to the resonator pitches. I have a one-shot clip that is triggered by the rim of the snare, and that's simply achieved by just mapping the MIDI note to the clip launch. In the clip launch settings, I have the launch quantization set to 1/16. It keeps nicely in time, especially when I restart it over and over. I'm using velocity to modulate the pitch of this sequence, and then putting it through a MIDI scale effect allows it to be diatonic. Almost all the action in this song is happening on the toms. First of all, I have a group of several different sounds that the toms play. Kind of the crux of how this composition works is before the instrument have a group of different MIDI effects with different pitch settings. I have the chain selector navigating through those different transpositions, and they're all crossfaded. And I have that automated over time, which you can see here. It's just a really simple giant triangle over the course of, I think, 64 measures. And that is the entire composition. So if I go ahead and launch this clip, you can hear it transposing the notes over time. And I can also navigate the different instruments with velocity. I have different MIDI notes assigned to the tom 2 head, tom 1 head, then the rims, which allows me to play I'm really into this kind of concept where most of the effort of the composition is put into the process or the sort of the mechanism, but I don't actually think through every specific note. The composition just sort of unfolds on its own over time. So the bird's eye view is that this composition runs through this automation 2 times, and then I set up automatic scene switching using an IAC bus, which you can see here. After running through this, it'll automatically switch to this next scene where we're just hanging out on a nice major 7th chord. So to see that in action, I'll go ahead and skip ahead in this scene switching clip. Thanks for watching this tutorial. If you haven't yet, you can watch the video of me patching the modular synth from scratch for this song, as well as me recording the song live.